What if I told you that you don't need $1 million to live like a millionaire? It's called millionaire math. I learned a simple piece of math recently that changed how I now look at my business. And it might be something that you've never heard of either. So today I'm going to show you what it is, how it works, and why it matters, especially if your income relies on working with clients. Now, I'll get to the exact millionaire math in just a few minutes, but first, let me share the moment that made me realize everything I believed about security was wrong. By the way, I'm Cindy. I help service providers like therapists, coaches, healers, practitioners build recurring monthly income so they're not constantly chasing clients to pay their bills. I spent decades believing a lie, and maybe you might have believed the same lie too. It's the lie most of us are taught. We're taught to get an education, get a good job, save and invest that money for retirement for someday, which is usually decades down the road. And I followed that plan until life got complicated. I took time off to be a stay-at-home mom for many years, which meant that I wasn't able to save and invest like I had been when I had been working. And several years later, at age 40, I went through a divorce and I needed to go back to work. That new career was in healthcare. And after 19 years of working there, I walked away to become a faster EFT practitioner specializing in grief and loss. I had invested 3 years studying, learning, getting certified, and spent a lot of money I really didn't have. And by the time I left healthcare, I was a month shy of turning 60, and I was way behind in the investment game. My only hope at that point was to go into business for myself, where I was able to determine how much I could charge per session, per client, how many clients I could see per day. I was doing the math. And finally, I felt like I was in control. And for a few years, it really worked. Things were going very well. I had clients, I had income. I thought I was finally safe until my mom's cancer returned. And I had to step away from my business to help take care of her. And when I stopped working, my income stopped too. There were no sessions, no appointments, no income. But here's the thing about that: life didn't get that memo. Life went on. Those bills, they still came. The car still needed gas. We still needed food. And every single day, I watched my savings account get smaller and smaller. Nothing was coming in to replace it. As I was sitting with my dying mother, the money just kept leaking out. And I remember looking at my bank account and thinking, how long can I do this before I'm in trouble? And that's a terrible thing to be thinking about when you're losing your mom. But that's the reality when your income depends on you showing up. And what hit me during those final few months of her life was thinking, I had done everything right. I had built my business, I served my clients well, I worked really hard, but I had built something that could not survive without me. And the moment that I stepped away for something I had no control over, the whole thing started to collapse. And I knew deep down I hadn't failed myself, but my business structure was never designed to support me when life got hard. And we never think life's going to get hard, but it usually does. And I don't think I'm alone in this, because if your income depends on your availability, you don't have a business, you have a treadmill. Maybe you've never had a loved one in hospice, and I hope you never do. But I bet you've had some version of this. A week where you were sick and couldn't see clients. A month where cancellations stacked up and suddenly paying the rent or the mortgage felt scary. A moment where you whispered to yourself, I don't know how much longer I can do this. You probably were burnt out, exhausted, quietly wondering, should I just go get a real job again? And I know you loved the work you were doing, but because of the way that taking on clients and having your own business is set up, it can bleed you dry. Now, recently I watched a video by Myron Golden that put words to what I had been feeling. And I'm going to link the video below because he deserves all the credit for this information. But here's the part he explained that really touched a deep place inside of me: the difference between cash accumulation and cash flow. And I had never heard it explained like this before. He said, money and blood have something in common, and that got my attention. They both have to stay in circulation to keep you alive. Now, I want you to think about that. Blood doesn't help you if it pools in one place. That becomes a clot. That's a problem. And that was the part that hit me because my daughter has a blood clotting disorder. So the analogy really hit home because she has had blood clots and has had serious complications. Money doesn't help you if it's just sitting somewhere for some day while you're drowning today. Money has to flow, just like blood. But here's where that becomes a problem for us service providers. Money flows out of your life every single day, like groceries, insurance, gas, subscriptions, kids, life, daily, right? But money only flows in when you show up, when you're available, when you're working. And that's not a mindset problem, that's a math problem. And math doesn't care how hard you work. And speaking of math, Myron broke down something in this video that I was watching that really opened my eyes as well. Remember the lie I told you about earlier in this video? The lie about getting an education, getting a good job, saving money for retirement for that someday. We've all been told the goal is to save hundreds of thousands of dollars, accumulate cash, and if you're really strategic about it, you might accumulate $1 million someday, right? I mean, that's the ultimate dream. That's making it. But for me, that wasn't my reality. So maybe you started your business later in life. Maybe you're rebuilding after a career change. Maybe you're just trying to keep your head above the water right now. And for you, $1 million doesn't feel like a goal. It feels like a fantasy, something for other people, people who had started the game earlier, people who had more than you, more than me. Heck, even a half a million doesn't go as far as it used to. But here's what Myron pointed out that shifted everything for me. He said $1 million invested at 6% gives you about $60,000 a year. That's a $5,000 a month cash flow to live on. That's what a millionaire lifestyle actually looks like: $5,000 a month in cash flow. For some, $5,000 a month may feel like they won the lottery, because it sure did to me. But you don't need $1 million to live like a millionaire. No, you need $5,000 a month in recurring income. And that's not a fantasy. That's math. That's buildable. That's something actually anyone can create right now, not in 30 years, not after you retire. Like right now, you can do that. Anything that you can create that gives you $5,000 a month in passive recurring cash flow is equal to having accumulated $1 million. And this is where it's going to hit home for us as practitioners because we already have to market ourselves. That's just part of having a business, right? Because if you're not marketing yourself, you don't really have a business. You have to be visible. You have to build trust. You have to keep showing up online because if you're not marketing, you really don't have a business. But if you are marketing, what if you could get paid for that work that you're already doing? What if the effort you're putting into marketing your services could also generate income on the side? Income that shows up whether you have a full calendar of clients or not. That's what I discovered. It's what I'm a part of now, one that pays attention to cash flow first, not decades from now, not a second business, not something that pulls me away from my work, something that works alongside it quietly and consistently. And it changed everything about how I think about cash flow now. Because you know what? I used to think the answer was more clients or raising my prices or just being better with money. But none of that solved the structural piece of it. What I actually needed, what I think a lot of us need, is income that shows up even when we can't. not instead of our service that we provide, but alongside of it. Something that deposits into your checking or savings account every single week, whether you see 20 clients or 0 clients. And that's not a fantasy anymore. That's a decision that you can make. And it starts with seeing the problem clearly and knowing that there's a path that doesn't require you to save for decades to feel safe. Because the truth is, cash flow creates options, options create peace, and peace changes everything. How you show up for your clients, your family, yourself. So if you're sitting there thinking, okay, I see the problem, I get the math, but what does this actually look like for someone like me? I put together a free guide for service providers like yourself, and this works for people that aren't service providers. It also works for people that just work with clients. It's not necessarily just for service providers. And I'll pin it in the comments below if you want to see what this actually looks like. It walks you through what I discovered when I found the ecosystem that I'm now a part of. It's a community of people who are building exactly this kind of recurring income alongside their current business. And when I saw what was possible, what people like us are actually doing, it changed how I see my future. And I'm not pretending I have it all figured out because I don't. I'm here because I finally found a path that makes sense for me. And I think you deserve to see it too because you deserve a business that supports you when life gets hard. You deserve cash flow that doesn't depend on your calendar being full. And you definitely don't need to wait until you're a millionaire to start living like one. So if this video helped you see money differently, just hit subscribe because I make videos like this for service providers who want financial peace, not just more clients. See you in the next video.